Hi, Dave. It is so wonderful to see you. I mean, I think the last time we met was in 2018 in Soho.
Yep.
So thank you so much for this evening. And no, it's wonderful because well, you're an internationally revered winemaker, entrepreneur, and founder of Orin Swift. And I've been having such fun bringing these wines to the UK or giving them even more cheer in the UK. And thank you so much for giving us some time this evening, your lunchtime. Just a
Yeah, no
little bit
problem.
more about the brand and about you, because you're equally as fascinating as the amazing, awesome eclectic wine range you've brought out. So for people who don't know, I mean, you first made your mark on the wine world with America's now probably most popular red blend, The Prisoner, and it's appeared in the Wine Spectator's top 100 list at least three times. Um, but part of its appeal has to be the iconic Goya etching on the
Mhm.
bottle. And I was going to say, like, this is very much like all of your wines have these very evocative labels and backstories. And so, therefore, I was just curious, how would you describe yourself? Are you a winemaker, artist,
Yeah.
entrepreneur, or marketeer?
Oh, well, first, thanks for having me. It's great to see you again. But definitely a winemaker. I mean, that's like in fact, it was a big day for me. I used to have my own business cards, but I only put winemaker on my business card when someone actually hired me to be their winemaker. And then I very quickly, even when I had owned Orin Swift for several
No
years,
way.
until someone actually paid me to be their winemaker. So it's something I take very seriously, but no, definitely winemaker and sort of all the rest of the stuff I just sort of stumbled into, but it was first and foremost, I mean that's really what I enjoy doing. I mean, I enjoyed all of it for different reasons, but if you had a gun to my head and said, you got to spend 12 hours a day doing one thing, it would be winemaking. Yeah.
And I mean, we're going to get on to all the other things which you do, which all actually tie perfectly into the wine range you create. I mean, it's all very symbiotic, but how would you describe Orange Swift wines to someone who's never tasted them before, who didn't know anything about them?
Yeah, we just kind of had this conversation yesterday about like not what's our North Star or whatever kind of, sort of euphemism someone wanted to use. But one thing that we've always tried to do, and we sort of again stumbled into it, is over deliver. So we always want to have the wine, the quality of the wine, the packaging, the name, and the price all be in line in a way that the consumer, the end user, if you will, feels like they got one over on us, like they got a smoking deal, and we're happy that if that's when I know we've won is when someone thinks that those idiots could have charged us $20 or 20 pounds more a bottle. So really what is very important for us is creating a style and then maintaining that style consistently over now decades, because there's nothing worse than when you fall in love with a wine and the next year it's twice the price and half the wine. So it's funny because I don't think I joke with our winemaking team is everybody just expects the wine to be good. No one, they always want to talk about the labels or the names or everything. It's like, can we talk about the wine that we spent,
Yeah.
like years making? But I'll take that as a backhanded compliment, so to speak. But no, we really just want to make it. It's also not about what I want to drink or what, my wife wants to drink. I really try to, I do a lot of traveling and I do a lot of listening. God gave you two ears and one mouth. And so I really try to get an understanding of what, we don't pander to anybody, but I really like to get an understanding of what people are looking for, both from a buyer, perspective in the industry, but also, the person that's at the winemaker dinner or that I'm having dinner with. I'll ask them a ton of questions about the wine and what they like and why they don't, and what other wines they like, et cetera, because those are all data points that can help us.
And like in terms of tasting, because as you say, like it must be quite, yeah, it is a backhanded compliment that everyone just assumes the wine's going to be good. But when you are creating that wine with all of your listening, what do you think it is that taste, or kind of palette, which you're kind of aiming for with the bottles which you produce?
Yeah, or I mean, first and foremost, if it's labeled a varietal, we want to be true to the varietal. So if it's Cabernet, it should at least have some semblance of Cabernet and look, smell, and feel like a Cabernet. But really, it's about balance, and that's a word that's thrown around a lot in winemaking because it's a you know it's an easy, accessible, catch-all phrase, but that's what we're really looking for. So I'm not a lot of winemakers are more sort of chemically inclined, and use, a lot of sort of numbers and stuff like that. But very rarely do I look at, I want to know what the alcohol is, the acid, the pH to a degree.
Yeah.
But ironically enough, we just had our wines analyzed, like I think it was like 5 vintages of one of our wines analyzed by this company that's what they do. So they do all the chemical analysis, and then they also have like sort of, I think it's a set of 15 different tasters, and they do all this, you know, stuff to like basically again analyze and then rank your wines against other wines. Long story longer is we came to the end of it, and I'm not, I'm in, a Luddite. I don't really do well with computers and spreadsheets and all that. So at the end of it though, but I can read them,
Yeah.
and luckily I was with the rest of my winemaking team, and there, it was like this hour-long presentation that could have been 5 minutes. And I was very, we were trying to be polite, and they're, also critiquing our wine. But the consistency of the wine, the way that it was both analytically and tasting wise, that it was graphed, all I said was, so what you're saying is myself and the entire winemaking team should get a raise? Because they had other wines that were like all over the place.
All the place. Yeah.
And, but I say all that not because I'm patting us on the back. I would pat my team on the back, but just by sort of instinct and by constantly trying to recreate what we've already created, we accidentally are that consistent. So again, finding that balance and and then maintaining that consistently is what we're really trying to do.
I know, and it is interesting how, because you say balance, but actually what I love about your wines is there is an opulence, but it's almost like kind of like a discerning hedonism. Like when I did a kind of wine supper club with last month, for instance, like with people in London, and most people hadn't tried your wines before, and like, oh my gosh, like this is just like so opulent and decadent, but there's still bright acidity there, and it still goes with food really well. And I think, and again, um, yeah, it is that balance, but it's not in a like kind of draconian way. It's, as you say, it's just more of an intuitive way, as you say. It's like, yeah, people want opulence, but they don't want confection.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't, and I think the way that we achieve that is we have, literally hundreds of different lots and vineyards that we, pick and choose from. So there's that. But also years and years ago, and back in 1998, my first commercial year that never actually got bottled because it was a disaster. But what we learned very quickly was that we're only like a chef, we're only as good as our ingredients. And we have one ingredient, grapes, and obviously yeast. So we try to do 95% of our winemaking in the vineyard. So try to find the best vineyards, farm them to the highest quality that we can, and then, get them in the winery and basically not screw them up. And so, and because we have so many, again, I think this year we surpassed the 300 lot level. I mean, so we start with I think it was more, it could even have been more like, anyway, let's just use 300 for a number because I know it's at
Yeah.
least that much. We start with 300 different, literally separate wines, and then start the process. Now they go into different, obviously into different blends. Um, but to have all those tools, but to have started in the vineyard, then it's just we're, like I said, we're trying to not screw it up at that point.
I mean, it's incredible because as well as mini vineyards, you also have access to incredibly good quality vineyards. This
Oh
isn't,
yeah.
so that's amazing. But like, how do you manage to work so closely with all of these different vineyards and these different lots? It's just amazing.
I mean, it used to be a lot of, when it was just me, it was a lot of, I spent a lot of time in my truck, driving around looking at vineyards. Now, I mean, I still do that, but I have an amazing, amazing team. Both here in California as well as, we make sort of wine all over the world, not as much as we
Hmm.
used to, but it's so critical to have a team that you work well with, that you can trust. And I was joking with someone just yesterday. I was like, I'm kind of a control freak, but and until I'm not. But once I realize that I can delegate and I can
Yeah.
trust somebody, I'm like, oh, now you're gonna get even more work because
Yeah, yeah,
as soon as,
yeah.
because, it just it and I'm so fortunate that I've got good teams at every level in the vineyards, in the winery, in sales. I mean, in everything. But once we all are sort of simpatico on what we're trying to do, the other thing is that I really try to be fair and say, look, it's a democracy till it's not. Like I'll listen to everybody's opinion, but at the end of the day, someone's got to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And the good news is that you guys all have cover because I'm going to take the heat. And if it's a success, I'm going to give you all the credit. If it's a failure, I'm going to be the one that has to get fired. So please speak your mind. And that way, I think everybody's very open about,
Yeah.
it's a discussion. It's never here's what we're going to do, go do it. It's like, what do you think? And I'm often overturned. I mean, not overturned, but convinced to try something new or go in
Yeah.
a different direction. But it's a meritocracy, best idea, best wine, best label, best name wins. It's not about egos.
No, I mean, like whenever you think of any kind of creative movement, it really is normally a community, which like it's yeah, exactly. So out of like all of the different wines that you've made and the various experiments and testings and all of that, which wine do you think you're most proud of?
Oh,
'Cause you've
wow.
been wait, Orin Swift was created in 1998, wasn't it?
Yeah, so 98 was our first vintage. As I said, we
Yeah.
didn't actually go to bottle.
But
We
yeah,
sold it in bulk. Um,
just thinking
I
out
would
of all of those years, yeah, which do you think you're most proud of? Like, it doesn't even have to be a tasting or whatever, but just given the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, the PR people are going to get mad at me because I often say like, well, it's easy. I hate all the wines I've ever made because I can always find something wrong with them, and that's why I very rarely drink my own wines. I'll check in with them every once in a while, but it's kind of torture. But where I get excited about is like abstract
Mm.
or 8 years in the desert because we make a lot of it. Like at this point in our career, this is actually my 29th harvest. So if
Oh,
we can't put together a couple hundred cases, call it, of extremely good wine, then we should just find another job. I mean, I'm not saying anybody could do that, but it's a completely different trick to put, 30, 40, 50,000 cases of wine consistently at that kind of price point where it's in its accessible price point. That's when I get excited. So
yeah.
abstract in 8 years are definitely near and dear to me, mainly for those reasons, because they're the most challenging, but also we have the most like interplay between them as well. So, and they're large volume. That's when I get in when I get impressed with other winemakers, and I've lots of friends that are amazing winemakers. But some of the winemakers that I'm most impressed with are my friends that make literally hundreds of thousands of cases of like one wine, and year in year out, it's just amazing. And that's tricky. That's hard to do. So,
Yeah, both of those wines did very well at the supper club I had last
yeah.
month. They are both available in the UK because we actually have 9 wines now available
Okay.
in the UK. And I'm very excited. I actually have in my glass the latest, which no one's yet tried in the UK. I'm like one of the first people. Advice
Oh.
from John Merlot. And while I take a little sip, I was just wondering, what is the inspiration behind this latest wine? Can you tell people a little bit about what it is and kind of why you created it?
Yeah, so Merlot, the actual varietal. So the reason that we wanted to work with Merlot again is when I was first coming up in, the early or mid 90s, Merlot was the, most popular red wine, I think in the world, definitely in the US. And
Mm.
then because of the movie Sideways, it like I mean it'll be a case study at the Harvard Business School someday because that movie literally like put a bullet in Merlot's head. Like
And
you couldn't give
you
it
know
away.
why he didn't like Merlot? It was
I
because
can't.
originally in the book, his ex-wife liked Merlot.
Ah,
So it had
so
nothing to do with the grape. Sorry, I just wanted to put that in there. But yeah,
no, it's
that
it's it's
recently.
crazy, and to see to be a part of watching like living that happen was kind of insane to think because this is sort of pre-social media too. I mean,
Yeah.
this was
Oh yeah.
almost 22 years ago. But I grew up, I mean, again in the my first job, not as a winemaker, but as a cellar worker, was at my wife's family. I mean, we weren't married then, but her family's winery, Whitehall Lane Winery, where they're back in the day, their number one wine was Merlot. So I cut my teeth making Merlot, and I love drinking Merlot. And winemakers, I mean, we love it as a varietal.
Yeah.
And so to when asked like what's something you'd like to mess around with again, knowing that Gallo owns some vineyards, some amazing vineyards that still had Merlot because so much of the Merlot got ripped out. I said, well, let's start playing around with Merlot. So that's how the process of the varietal started. And we had about, I think we did two or three vintages before we settled in on what we're doing now. We were able to, because we always make some Merlot.
Yeah.
So we were kind of experimenting with it, on the side without kind of saying anything. And then the label, Samantha, who you just saw a second ago, um, Samantha Smith, who basically runs my life, has for the last 15 years. Um, when she first started working with me, she was asking for some time off, and I mean, we became close friends very quickly, but we still are very close. And I said, well, Sam, what do she was single at the time. I said, oh, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm going to Austin, and then I'm going to, where was it? New Orleans. And I'm like, wow, that sounds like a fun trip. What are you doing? And she said, well, I don't know if I told you, but I go to dive bars basically, and I take pictures, photographs of what people write in
I
bathroom
love that.
stalls. And so I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And God bless her. I think it was either 7 or 10 years, not every time, but she would take time off and go do this all over the US. In fact, and also for some odd reason, the US and Ireland. And
Interesting. I love
yeah,
I mean,
and
I went to uni in Ireland. Yeah, there's some interesting things
exactly.
there.
So
Yeah.
it made it over the pond, but she and I, every how many people have you talked to and they're like, oh, I want to make a movie someday, or I'm going to publish a book, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and they never do it, and they talk about it and talk about it. Well, Sam did the opposite. I think I was one of the only people that knew she was even messing around with it, and then she published the book, and it's called Advice from John. And so, and it's thick. I mean, I probably have one around here somewhere, but I mean, it's thousands and thousands of these pictures. It's absolutely amazing. And then what she started doing was turning some of her favorites into large, like 4x6 pieces of art, blowing them up with a metal background so that you can see it. And then, for instance, where it says you had me at hell no,
Yeah.
um, and we have it in the tasting room next door, she then accents it with neon light. So there's these amazing pieces of art. And so I was like messing around and thinking, I'm always kind of playing around with label ideas. And I said, hey, Sam, I don't know if we're going to do it, but first and foremost, can I get your permission if we might want to do this? And she was all in. So,
When was the
it,
book first published?
ooh, probably 5, 6 years ago, if I were to
It was
guess.
like when you first started thinking, okay, with this art, like there could actually it served as a source of inspiration for a possible wine.
Yeah, it was one of those, like, sometimes these ideas macerate for a long time, and
Hmm.
then I mean I've got labels I've been working on for 10 years that no one's ever seen. But that one, the minute I saw it, I was like, that would be super cool. I gotta ask Sam. Um, and also it's like and I mean I'm not, I don't like to call it marketing because that to me is kind of cheesy. But I can always tell my own story, but it was really nice to finally include somebody else in the process and who's so like near and dear to me and has been so instrumental in my career to be able to actually have I think a better story and a story that involves somebody else and their artwork was a lot of fun. Yeah.
No, I think I can't wait to show people like we're having a big trade tasting next month, and I can't wait. I mean, if I just had to say, because you said you loved Merlot, you grew up with Merlot, other winemakers love Merlot. What do you think is so special about that grape, and which unfortunately people have either never experienced or forget because of Sideways?
Yeah, it's one of the few varietals that just on its own has a lot of different characteristics. So a lot of the time there's varietals that you just know this is just a better blend, like Petit Syrah. I love Petit Syrah. It's a much better blending varietal than it is on its own.
Yeah.
Merlot. it's amazing to use as a blender, and we do that with Papillon and some of our other wines. But it can also stand alone. So to have a varietal when grown correctly and picked, at the right bricks, it can have like that sort of hedonistic character, yet maintain acid and also be, have some weight to it. So, and then and it's a little bit of a chameleon because depending on where you grow it, it can also be, pretty intense and tannic, like on the hillsides. It's like almost tastes like Cabernet. And then if you get it in some of the cooler climates, it can be, like I said, it holds its acid so well that it can be pretty racy too. So it's a lot of fun as a varietal. And there's probably four main vineyards that we did start out as the base for this blend. So we have, and within those vineyards, we have several different blocks, and some of it is hillside, some of it's sort of gently rolling hills, and some of it's actually just flat river bottom. I mean, not river bottom, but former river bottom, so very alluvial. It looks
Yeah.
like, you know, basically a bunch of round stones.
No, I mean, I'm loving it. I mean, do you think that Merlot is having a comeback? Like when you're producing this and you're excited by it, it's accompanied with this amazing artwork and story. Do you generally think that kind of actually now is also just market wise a good time to be bringing out a Merlot?
I think so. It feels like it. I'm seeing, I mean, it never went away for like, I don't want to say like us old timers, but like, but it's kind of, I don't want to say cute to see some of the younger generation. Like, it's almost nostalgic for some of the younger winemakers because they know the sideways story, but they don't know like the true history, or they'll know it as one of the five noble varietals from, Bordeaux, or they might have a little bit of context, but it's really fun to see some of the younger winemakers getting excited about it. And now it's hard, like, because so much of it got ripped out. It's really hard to find
I was gonna say,
anywhere
yeah.
low grapes, let alone like quality. And to see it actually now getting replanted is pretty cool.
And is it getting fairly significantly
A
replanted?
little bit, not a ton. But yeah, I think I was just talking to a buddy who put in, I mean, it's 5 acres. It's not a, a huge amount, but in a pretty amazing spot here in Santa Helena. So that tells me he knows something. No.
Yeah, no, that is exciting. And I mean, I'm enjoying this now. I mean, it's really cold over here now in the UK and it's getting dark early. And I just love it because there's spice there. There's kind of licorice spice, and it's almost like a kind of, but there's Campari orange peel, but then there's like mulled plums, but there's also mocha beans. As you say, like you kind of go through a whole gamut. And I feel like, ooh, I can kind of settle into the evening. How would you enjoy a glass of advice from John? Like kind of what food, what music, the setting?
Oh, geez. Yeah, it's funny because I've actually only ever had it on its own. So,
Fair enough.
um, yeah, I would have to kind of think about it. And backing up is in because this is a big part of this wine is usually I'm not saying that we, like I said, it's there's some group discussion, but in the end, it's like I said, it's a democracy till it's not. This
Yeah.
is one of the few wines where it was almost like I don't want to say a challenge, but we had much more direction because and that direction was, and I've never, it sounds so obvious, but I've never thought about the at this sort of singular of a level was how can we make a wine that's going to make someone want a second glass, which
Mm.
you should sort of always be doing, but I've never thought about it that succinctly. So when we were putting this wine together, it was like almost like how do we fool someone into having a second glass? So we never were really thinking about what's it going to pair well
Go
with,
with, or
anything
yeah.
like this. It's like it was a very like kind of direct order of like, all
Yeah.
right, so and we started calling it like second glassable or quaffable or sessionable.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah. As I said,
So
getting cozy, I can now pour myself another glass and watch like my favorite crime stuff.
that's where I was going. This is like the fireside,
Yeah, put on my
Netflix one.
slippers and yeah.
And be careful because you'll turn around and half the bottle will be gone.
I know it's really delicious. I can't wait to share it with everyone. I was also wondering, so obviously this is launching into the UK like on trade in October. I was wondering, is the book Advice from John available in the UK?
That I don't, I doubt it right now. I think Sam just had to do another printing of it. You know what, I can find out, and if nothing else, we can
Yeah, I was
sort of
just
come
curious
over.
because it
Yeah.
just sounds so amazing. I've seen on the website, but I was just curious if there were any kind of.
Oh, here it is. I knew I had one around here. So there's the book. You can see it.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah,
yeah,
and
so
it's
you can,
proper. It's a proper tome. I like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you can see there's
Oh wow.
like thousands and thousands, and I mean, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands. So, um, but we'll for sure get you a copy, and then I'll ask
Cool.
him to see Sam in a second. So I'll ask her about international distribution. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see people loving that. Really,
Uh,
really loving that.
well, everybody's been in a bathroom stall, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly. And it really ranges from like musings from like I remember seeing something from Cicero being like that's cool
yeah.
to like
Oh
literally
yeah.
like someone kind of like just like writing drunkenly their number and whatever else and you're like
There's definitely some R-rated stuff in there. Yeah. Yeah.
you get the whole gamut. It's great.
Yeah.
And also the friends you can make also in a loo as a woman. I spend quite a lot of time adding to people in the loo, definitely in Ireland. But anyway,
Yeah.
we'll move on. Um, I was also just wondering because you were talking about it being sessionable and like just being able to enjoy it on its own. And now obviously it's hitting the UK and you already have nine wines here. Have you noticed a difference in the palate between UK and the US? Or do you actually think, nah, like people are people and as long as it's presented to them in a certain way? I was just like curious how you thought about that. Like whether you think it's a cultural thing or whether you just think it's really just, how you present it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. Just a brief history. So I grew up off and on in Bristol, England when I was much younger.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, so we there's a very strong connection. And then a guy named Richard and Sarah Case, and then Bob Doyle. They both all three of them actually attended Plumpton College in is it Brighton? I think it's in. And
Not far.
and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and they run our winery in the southeast of France.
Uh,
So I was very curious to ask them about what's the British market like and kind of what to expect, because I I was always under the impression that not that much California wine makes it there, and it's much more sort of European centric, and especially at our price points. And then I of all places, I was with my son, and he was probably oh, I don't even know. We were out there for a football match in Paris. Anyway, we go to Harrods of all places in London, and they had Papillon. They had all like five. I didn't even know we were distributed in the UK, and because I don't really deal with the international stuff, I didn't back then. So I was actually really excited to see it, and I've been very pleasantly surprised by the the acceptance, and almost every time that I've been to the market, which has been probably three or four times now for work, all I hear is that we can't, is that in the UK they can't get enough. So I'm like, that's awesome.
I must admit, I used to like being half and half. I used to think, oh yeah, the more Europe, and people will say, oh, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of oaky California
Yeah.
Chardonnay. I'm not a big, but again, it comes back to your points, which you mentioned at the beginning, balance.
Mhm.
Um, and actually, people might be like, oh, there's no varietal on it, whatever. But if they see the label, they're given a story, they're in a kind of relaxed environment. It's amazing. Like people didn't normally people would be like, oh my goodness, it's quite high in alcohol, or oh, I don't
Mhm.
normally drink X varietal, or,
Yeah.
and actually at the subcover, people didn't really know too much, but just given the stories and the environment and the labels, everyone was loving it. And yeah, like we had some food there, but it wasn't really the food pairing which did it. I think it's just making people feel relaxed and having that balance. And I think a lot of the time people say things like, oh, I don't like oak, because they feel like that's the right thing to
Oh
say.
yeah.
But it's like I would never judge a wine depending on how much oak it had, or dependent on its alcohol, or dependent whether it's a natural wine. Everything's like meant to be in balance. Like the fact
Yeah.
is, like if everything's in balance, and I won't notice whether it's 12% or 15%, it's yeah.
And I've had that conversation so many times with sort of the more of the bean counter types in the industry, either
Yeah.
distributors or and and I'll never forget because this was many years ago, and our wines used to be much higher alcohol. And back when I still owned the brand, I would fudge with the numbers a little bit because it was my risk. And we used to have more to play with. But I'll never forget, it was a wine critic, and he tasted the wine and was like, "Oh my God, this is awesome. Love this wine." Turned around the bottle and saw that it was like 15.7 or something. He's like,
Yeah.
and all of
No.
a sudden, I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, 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 wait. You just said you love this
Yeah.
wine. And
Yeah.
then so anyway, ever since then, I've been, it's, that's why I don't kind of paint with numbers, right? It's, if it's in balance, it's in balance.
That's it.
And honestly, if every wine that we made, everybody loved, we'd be doing something wrong. I mean, I had an old time farmer here, this guy, Doug White. And I'll never forget this. Early on in my career, we were talking about, I can't remember what we were talking about, but it stuck with me. He said, I figure if 10% of the people out there hate me, I'm doing something right. Because there's no way you can please everybody, right? So I understand there's going to be some people that the label's too risque, the wine isn't their style. I'm not offended at all. In fact, that's kind of like it should be that way because you can't be everything to everyone. So it has to have its own personality. Now, having said that, none of our labels are meant to shock and awe. We'll touch the line, but we're not trying to be
Not
gratuitous.
gratuitous.
Yeah, never. And that goes with the wines too. We're not trying to make these like so over the top wines that we're making a statement. I'm in the wine business, not the wine hobby. Like, it's not about what I like I said earlier. It's not about what I like or my wife likes or my friends like. I'm listening to the consumer and trying to figure out what they want to drink. And then, because that's my job. My job isn't to go off on my own. I can do that for myself and make, I love Grand Cru Burgundy. We make a Grand Cru Burgundy, a
Yeah.
very small amount. It's completely different from anything we do at Orin Swift. And that's my prod. You know what I'm saying? I can do that, but we make, one, two, 3 barrels a year. I mean, I I drink most of that.
And you also make wine in the Roussillon, right?
Yep, yep. So we do in the southeast of France. So we have about 300 acres of mainly old vine Grenache there, built a winery there. So we've been doing that since 2009 was our first vintage. So yeah, it's amazing. I love it there.
And how do you divide your time between the States and France?
It's changed quite a bit. So early days, I would go at least once a month, and then during harvest every 7 to 10 days. And then that was consistent up until about COVID. And also, that's when we were building the winery, buying vineyards, like, so I'm a member of a club that you never want to be a member of, which is Air France's La Première Club. So you have to do 100,000 miles a year for 10 years straight. And
Oh, wow.
so I jokingly say I'm unfortunately a member of that club. Since COVID, and then we've gotten much busier domestically, and we're kind of on cruise control there. So what's funny is this last summer, my wife and I have a 22-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old son, and they actually went for a month without me because they're like, "Look, we get it. You're too busy to go to Moree, is the name of the town, but we're still going because they've grown up, going there
Oh,
all the time."
lovely. They have a real connection there too. Yeah, it's a real
Absolutely.
family.
Yeah, which makes no sense because it's a town of like 500 in the foothills of the Pyrenees, and there's nothing but, vineyards and wineries around, but they love it. And we've got a very, very tight-knit group of friends there. But yeah, I used to go, I mean, it's funny, Samantha was just showing me my schedule from right before COVID, and I was probably averaging, especially because we were also making wine in Spain. So I was spending, I mean, it was like every 2 weeks. I was either going to Spain and because it's only about an hour and a half by train from Barcelona. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so I would do like a double up on the trip, but
Wow.
I miss it. I miss it a lot. Yeah.
I mean, you have amazing creative wine ranges all around the world. How do you go about like deciding where you're going to be focusing your attention? Not let alone wine range, but also just like region.
Yeah, it's about 4 years ago. My wife actually said that with maybe some four-letter words and other adjectives. And the kids were both at university, and we had a bunch of other things we had built and were running distillery. I was kind of doing a little too much stuff. And so about 4 years ago, we jokingly called it like the focus factory. Like, because you asked me, the first thing you asked me is, and I said, I'm a winemaker. And I
Mhm.
really realized that I want to get back focused to just making, being in the wine business solely, which I
Yeah.
never got out of, but I was doing several other things. So we just slowly started jettisoning these other projects and getting more and more focused. And really what we saw and has happened is, which also was sort of corresponded a little bit with, it was a couple of years after the sale to Gallo of Orin Swift. And it's very important to me. I mean, I couldn't be happier. It's much more of a partnership than, I mean, technically it was a sale, but I always want to over deliver as a partner as well. So I would say in the last probably 3 to 5 years, I've really been focused on domestic winemaking and really on Orin Swift, and that's why you're seeing sort of the new innovation that we've come up with, including advice from John. And we actually have a couple other things that I don't want to ruin the surprise, but in the next sort of 12 to 24 months that we'll be introducing that we've been working on for several years. So yeah, and it's kind of nice to get back to the roots a little bit
Yeah.
and as much as I was very lucky, and I'm also older, so I traveling that much isn't as easy as it used to be, especially because we were making wine in Argentina and Spain and France and Italy and Portugal and Australia and New Zealand. So it's like at a certain point, your body can only do so much of that. So and how much it are you doing a lot of work, well, or are you doing a little bit of work amazing? And so we try to get back to let's just kind of go narrow and deep on some of these
Yeah.
and I get to sleep in my own bed, which isn't so bad either. But no, I would say that the focus it's now having said that, I was just scheduling a trip to go make wine somewhere else. So anyway, it's
That was
sort
gonna
of
be one of my questions. If like you could work anywhere else, where it would be, but I guess you can't tell me on this interview.
well, it's not I don't want to ruin the surprise 'cause it's not a done deal yet, but it's fun and it's a quick trip, so it's not too bad. So.
I mean, again, one of my questions was how do you balance being a creative entrepreneur, winemaker with all the admin, logistics, and deadlines, with running these various businesses? I was just wondering how you like did all.
Well, we're super fortunate. Like I said, I have amazing teams in everywhere. But also as far as deadlines, very rarely do we, I mean, of course, eventually there will be a deadline, but we're sort of always in motion. We're always working on something. So usually and the creative side of it is, I mean, it's all fun to me, but the creative side is fun because I get to choose when I do it within reason. And I mean, I was working on a label last night while watching TV. It's just, but there's no pressure there. I'm just like, I was going through a magazine and saw something I liked and then started sketching something out. So it's like it's always going. And so I don't. Earlier on when I was like the day to day, like literally dragging hoses kind of winemaker, I would say this is by the time I'm sick of being in the vineyard, and I was also farming. So by the time I'm sick of being in the vineyard, it's time to be in the winery. By the time I'm sick of being in the winery, it's time to come up with a label. So it was like, and I probably suffer from a little bit of ADHD or whatever they call it. So as soon as something is getting sort of tedious, I can always be like, all right, tomorrow I'm gonna work on labels. Or, it's because, and there's times when you don't have that luxury, but I think I'm very, very lucky that I'm able to, within reason, pick and choose. I mean, there's always work to do, but it doesn't always have to be the same thing every day. And the deadline, again, for the most part, by the time there's a deadline, like I'm working on stuff that my deadline is actually right now, literally, I'm working on stuff and the deadline is a fall of 27 release. So
Yeah.
if we don't get it right, then then that's on us. That's a ways away. But I like that, and I like knowing that because often, for every label, for instance, that you see, there's
Yeah.
10 that are on the cutting room floor that never made it. And so having again that luxury, the wine, it's a little. more difficult because we only get one harvest a year. But for instance, we made Pinot Noir for 10 years before we ever bottled it. We made Merlot for 20 something years until we bottled it on its own. So, you know, again, that horizon, that time horizon is we're very, very lucky to have a pretty lengthy one for all aspects.
No, it's great because you have like a very kind of structure which then allows you to be creative and
Yeah.
play around and have that flexibility. I mean, going like right back, just because I'm just so interested in this creative process and what you've now been able to, thanks to these teams around you, but really thanks to you and your talent, you've been able to create for yourself. This all really started after you'd done one harvest with Robert Mondavi, and then that's what kind of catapulted you into this whole new journey with Orin Swift. But I was just curious, and like to anyone who's out there like thinking about going into winemaking, how easy is it to make wine without wine school or like having spent too much time in wineries? I was like, just it's just so amazing your story. And like some people are like, oh, well, I don't know, do I have to go to UC Davis or do I have to spend many years at Plumpton? Or, I was just really curious to see what you think on that.
Yeah, I would just say go work a harvest.
Go work a harvest.
Go
Yeah.
work a harvest. You'll see very quickly that, I mean, look, I technically I'm a high school dropout, and that's a whole nother funny long story. It's not nearly as bad as it sounds, but and I'm not a chemist. I'm also not an idiot, but it's cavemen figured out how to convert sugar into alcohol. That part isn't that tough. And once you've seen it done a few times, yes, you can screw it up very quickly. But if you even it's not as hard as you'd think. And if you work one harvest, you're gonna like a real harvest, and where hopefully you're not a too big of like it might.
Oh, wait, the sound went off for some reason. Hello?
Oh,
For some reason, oh, for some reason you're saying like when I started and then it suddenly cut out the sound. I don't know why.
oh, is it still
But now you're
going?
back. Now you're
Oh,
back.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I won't move. Um,
Sorry, you were saying, but when it came to you, like you said, you can do like one harvest and then sorry, and then it cut out.
yeah, so in one harvest, you can very quickly grasp, okay, grapes come in, you crush them, you add sulfur, then you wait, then you add yeast, then you monitor it, you make other additions. It's not really that the actual process is not, I mean, not that it's a recipe, but and then you can see, oh, but if you don't do this, this happens. I mean, it gets very complicated very quickly, but the more you see, and that's what I was saying, is if either of my kids, which neither of them have shown much desire to get in the business, I would say absolutely just go work a harvest. And I would try to find like a medium, not too small and not too big, but a medium-sized winery where you could see a little bit of everything, because that's the only way to do it. And had I not met my now wife, my plan was to do Northern Hemisphere, then harvest, then Southern Hemisphere, and just get as much experience as I could. But that changed after I met again my now wife, then girlfriend, because that wasn't going to happen. So, but what I did do is I worked at one point when I first started Orin Swift, I had I was working three other jobs. So I was a consulting winemaker, I was a full-time winemaker at a place called Bennett Lane, and I was still working weekends for another winemaker named Kathy Corson, just as a cellar worker.
Oh,
Because
wow. Person, that's
I just wanted to, because the best way to learn is by talking to other winemakers and seeing, and that's why for many years we had a brand called Locations where we made wine over the world, all over the world, and part of that was just continued education because I met, all these different winemakers again all over the world and saw, oh wait, I've never seen that before. I'm going to steal that, you know what I mean? Or I'm going to try that. And the beauty with winemaking is we're all competitors, quote unquote, but within reason, everybody's had to help out. Everybody's had a question that they couldn't answer. And you might not tell, all your, deep down secrets on certain vineyards or practices, but it's such a like open community that and to me I'm just sort of naturally curious. So the best way for me to learn is just by asking a lot of questions. So again, getting long-winded answer to your question, but I would say if you want to become a winemaker, absolutely go work a harvest. If you want to go back to school for it, great. But as the first winemaker, a guy named Dean Sylvester that I ever worked for, I actually asked him that question. He said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you can go get your master's at Davis, but then you're going to come back here and do exactly what you're doing now." So it's just like a 2 year. Now you're going to learn a lot, and you'll technically know when you see something that happens, you might remember what you learned in a enology class, or you can just learn it in the cellar. And so I don't know. I just wasn't in the mood to go back to school, and
No,
um,
fair enough.
uh,
Fair enough. Um, no, I'm glad you answered. That was like also on my mind. I mean, I was also going to say, like, would you have any advice to give to any like budding entrepreneur or creative? Because like you juggle so many different things and you like, kind of made a life around your interests and you like and like wine to you is very much tied into art and music and storytelling and experiential. And I was just like wondering if you had any advice, even in a broader sense for creatives or entrepreneurs in terms of
just I mean,
passion.
I'm not using the cheesy, like, it's not a cheesy Nike slogan. It's a great Nike slogan, but just do it. Like, worst thing is you're going to fail and you're going to learn. I just had this conversation with my son. He's looking at working for this startup, and I said, "Look, here's the best case scenario is you're probably going to get equity. So if it works, you're going to get paid. That's might not even be the best scenario, because if it doesn't work, you're going to get way more experience, and you learn so much more from what goes wrong than from what goes
Yeah.
right. And you see how much luck is involved, and timing and mistakes. I mean, The Prisoner was a mistake. We just had a label that we from for a different brand. There was just, I call them happy accidents now. Like, we've had our biggest successes started off as our biggest failures. And so, but you're never going to know if you don't try. And guess what? No one really cares. So if you're an artist, for instance, if you love what you're doing and everybody hates it, great. But no one's like going to judge you on that. They're not going to think you're a worse person because they don't like your art. And it's hard because it's personal, but I mean, I'm using art as an example, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and you know what? You're probably going to change your style eventually. I mean, so, but if you don't start, you're never going to find out. So just do it, and it's really not that hard. And especially, I used to say, well, like with my son who's 20, I'm like, dude, you're 20. You've got a life. This is nothing compared to what you're going to have to deal with. And I'm 52, and I'm my dad who's older is like, and I didn't even know this because I was
oh no, the sound cut out again.
there as and everything, and he reminded me that Robert Mondavi didn't start Robert Mondavi Winery till after he was 50. And you hear about these like
Oh
writers
my
that
goodness.
Grandma Moses, the very famous artist here in the States. I don't think she did her first work until she was like 60. So it's never too late to start, but I
Oh,
would say it's also much better to start early if you can. Yeah.
that's awesome. Thank you. Just two more questions. How do you switch off?
Oh, Mm, I maybe like through exercise if that's possible, or just a couple glasses of wine at the hour. No, it's tough because I'm very lucky that I really enjoy it. So
Yeah. So yeah, yeah,
sometimes switching off is just switching lanes
yeah.
because but and I'm like I said, I'm very lucky. We had a big Cabernet like production tasting yesterday, and I needed that. Like I felt like I hadn't been in like the winemaking trenches for a while. And so that felt like almost like not even switching off, but like a vacation from, because I'm also been we're working also on this pretty intensely on the label right now. So I would say it's less switching off as much as it is sort of switching lanes.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. Okay, this is the last question before we're just going to do some fire rounds at the end. But as mentioned before, like you've been involved in various, obviously all kinds of wine ranges, but also business ventures like distilleries, and I've heard about like a baseball team and you've helped like raise cattle, and there was talk at one stage of a fried chicken venture. I'm not sure what happened, but like I don't know if it did happen. But if you could launch any other venture outside of wine now, what would it be?
Oh,
What have you thought about, like outside of the wine space?
well, so unrealistically,
Yes,
um,
and realistically.
unrealistically, if I could do anything, I would just because I'm fascinated by film. I'd love to like just start at the bottom and like watch the process and try to make a short film. I think that would just be super sort of rewarding,
That would be
but it's completely unrealistic. We sort of talked about it, but it's just that it's too much time. Realistically, probably what our next, big adventure, if you will, would be outside of the wine business is going to have something to do with Montessori education.
amazing. My niece just started at a Montessori school. My dad
Uh,
went to a Montessori school. That's so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, both my kids did, and we obviously were love my kids, and we're very, very close. But they would be the first to tell you that core, their what sort of made them who they are within reason is the way they learn, from Jesus, kindergarten through high school, well, till ninth grade was Montessori, and the base, the way they think, the way they process, the way I would like to say my wife and I can take a little bit of credit, but it was definitely that, and I see that as something that you can kind of do into your 90s,
Yeah.
and help other kids.
That's so awesome. Wow. Well, I'm always learning new things and being inspired and excited when I talk to you. So thank you so much. I was just gonna do just a little bit because I'm gonna do like these kind of fire round questions, just these short questions, which are either yes, no, or snap answers, or like whatever kind of comes into your head.
I'm getting nervous.
So, favorite restaurant in Napa?
Cook.
Hidden winery gem in Napa?
Oh, I'm gonna get in trouble because I gotta like try to shout out all my friends. Probably Eric and Haley Dodd at Hayfork.
Brilliant. Last meal with one of your wines. What would your last meal be and what would the wine be?
Oh, for sure would be the Mankay, the Burgundy, and anything that my wife cooks.
Nice. Orin Swift in 3 words.
Still not done.
Your view on wine with ice.
Oh, don't mind it, and have plenty of friends' wives that put ice in their Chardonnay, but I'm obsessed right now with chillable reds. So it's kind of a tweener. Yeah,
Okay, no, get that. Art or wine?
wine.
The most difficult Orin Swift wine which you have made.
Oh well, besides all of them, I would say it's a current wine that we're in process on, has been giving us fits. So to be determined.
Continued. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Dream. Okay, who would be your dream guests at a dinner party? And they could be dead.
Oh wow. Eric Cantona, just because he'd be funny. Oh, that's my God, I've never been asked this question. Probably Malcolm Gladwell and Hemingway. Yeah,
Nice.
Hemingway for sure. Yeah. Actually, I'm gonna back that all up. Sorry to Cantona
You
and
can have several. You can have several.
yeah, it would be Hemingway.
Humor. You might
Yeah.
need some humor in there as well as So no,
Yeah.
I like
'Cause I'm
this.
not gonna go to the whole like Gandhi or any of that stuff. Like I want to have a party.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Screw cap or cork?
Cork, but I'm coming around the screw cap for certain wines. Yeah.
Skateboarding or music?
Oh, music, because I'm too old to skateboard. Yeah.
Californian wines or wines from the Roussillon?
Ouch. I know I can't say both, but I would have to. I'm fifth generation Californian, so as much I'd have to say California, but I love the wines we make there.
Favorite music for inspiration?
Oh, punk rock or hip hop. No.
Book which you're currently reading?
Oh God, I'm on a couple right now. The what I is intriguing, it's totally boring if you're not well, it just won the well, it didn't just win the Pulitzer Prize, but it's called The Prize, and it's the history of basically oil in the world and how
Oh, I've
it's
heard this.
yeah, it's a thick
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's intriguing though, because it's a lot of the stuff you think you know, and then it's a lot of stuff that is amazing just from a sort of global, you know, I mean, it touches on everything from
It's all
economics to war
interconnected.
to
Yeah,
yeah, it's insane.
that's
And it's an amazing history lesson. Oh.
that's a solid answer.
Yeah.
Celebrity wine, going from one part of culture to the other.
Meaning
What are your views on like celebrity wine?
you got to be really careful. When done correctly, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
But and I because we've collaborated with people before, I just you have to let the celebrity know that this is only going to work because all of a sudden everybody else just becomes completely unimportant. So I would say to, and I've had friends, and I'm like, look, this can be as big or as small as you want it to be because when we go into market, no one cares who I am. So if you're willing to do, and it's more in spirits, but like people see, the Casamigos and George Clooney and they're like, oh my God, those guys, they work their butts off. And like Ryan Reynolds with Aviation Gin, I mean, he was going to Costco and signing people's bottles. And like the guys from Breaking Bad who are like out there doing it and
Yeah.
like DJing and it's just, you got to put in the work. Or you should really love the product you're working with. If you want to if you're going to just give your name or do a licensing agreement, go make some shoes or jeans or whatever. But if you don't love it, don't do it. Especially I mean, I've heard about like people that no longer drink that are, were alcoholics that are sober now that have like wine brands. I'm like, what? You that doesn't add up. Yeah. So no, I don't. It's funny because it's. I don't want to say it's controversial on our side because everybody thinks that it's going to work, but very, very rarely does it work. You all you hear about, and I love Snoop Dogg and what he's done with 19 Crimes, but he's working his butt off, right?
Yeah, totally.
But far more of those things don't work that you never even hear about. Yeah.
I think that's a really fair answer.
Yeah.
Music soundtrack for your life.
Oof. Ironically, it would probably be kind of where I started, whether I liked it or not. But both my parents were classical musicians, and I played actually classical violin growing up for 12 years. And so growing up, the soundtrack of my till I left the home was always I think it was KT, it was the public channel, the classical public channel in LA. So if I really want to just take the volume down, no pun intended, but it would be classical music of anything, just not more modern classical, but like, Bach, Beethoven,
Yeah,
Brahms, Chopin, Mozart. It just reminds me of my kitchen at home.
I love that. And desert island wine. The last question, which is a bit kind of corny, but I prefer the sound
And
question, but
anything from Burgundy. Yeah, red or white. Probably red, but because you could chill it. Maybe not on the desert, but yeah, no, I just and it's not unique to me. I think a lot of my friends in the I think eventually as winemakers always seem to gravitate eventually to either Pinot or Burgundy and usually Pinot and usually red Burgundy. I've just when I geek out with my friends that are also in the business, usually we're geeking out over some red Burgundy. No, well,
oh well, thank you so much, Dave, for your time. This has
of
been
course.
Absolutely wonderful seeing you again, even if it is over a
Yeah.
screen. Next time I'll get over to your amazing tasting room in St. Helena, which looks
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, no, we'd love to
Yeah.
have you. And I think I don't know exactly when, but it'll probably be second quarter of next year. I think I'm going to be coming out to London. So I'll let you know.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that'd be such fun. Well, we will be raising glasses with the London Wine Trade next month, in 2 weeks' time, I think, or about 2.5 weeks' time, with advice from John. But
Oh,
no, I just want to say thank you so much.
of
And yeah, well, we'll be in touch anyway with your wonderful team. And I just wishing you all the best with all your various projects going on. And yeah, I just love how passionate you are as ever. It's always wonderful to see. So thank you.
Well, great to see you again. Unfortunately, not in person, but we'll do it soon.
Absolutely. And fun fact, my mother is actually sixth generation Californian.
Oh, see, she got me beat. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Mendocino originally.
yeah, what's that?
Mendocino.
Okay. Oh,
That's
wow. So
my
she
family.
went south. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's crazy because it's as common as I just expected it to be because my wife's like fourth generation and I've got other friends, but we're at the point where you were either an Indian or Mexican. Like so no, it's something I'm very proud of. Yeah, and that's awesome for your mother. That's legit. Yeah. Yeah. So that makes you
I
second.
have I have an LA Rams vintage shirt when they were around the first time that we
Yeah.
left. And now
Oh
I
yeah.
can wear it again now that they're back.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.